There we go. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Smith, and I'm the Digital Programming Coordinator here at the Central Arkansas Library System. Thank you so much for joining me today for Hello World Object-Oriented Code. This is, excuse me, goodness. This is just after lunch. This is the third in our Hello World beginner code series. So I hope you'll get a lot out of it and learn some cool stuff. And so, yeah, glad you're here. Before we dive in, a few quick things to get out of the way here. First of all, of course, there's always tons of cool stuff going on around CALS. If you head to cals.org, move your mouse over events, and head to find an event online, then you'll be able to see a bunch of events that we have coming up. Lots of cool stuff. It's still, we're still in full swing for Summer Reading Club. So get on that, see what we've got going on there. And hopefully you'll find other really interesting stuff to check out as well. So the other thing that I always like to mention to folks at the beginning of class is if you have questions, speak up and let me know. Don't worry about whether it might feel like a silly question or if you think it might seem obvious to me or anything like that. That's not at all a concern that I have. What I'm concerned about is making sure that you get to ask questions when you have them. So, you know, if you have any sort of question, speak up and let me know. I mean, any sort within reason. You know, I will not be answering any questions about food processors today or history or any of those sorts of things. We will be talking about code, but, you know, within that realm, have at it. And the way you do that is if you're joining me here in Zoom, what you'll want to do is head down to the bottom, tap or click on that little chat speech bubble down at the bottom of your Zoom window and type your questions into the chat and press enter to send them on to me or return if you're on a Mac. If you are joining me in the Zoom mobile app, what you'll want to do is tap the middle of the screen and look in the corner for a button that says more. Tap on that, and in the menu that pops up, tap on chat there and you should find it. If you are joining me on Facebook, what you'll want to do is just put your question in the comments, just like you would comment on any other post on all of Facebook, and I'll see that and be able to respond to you just fine. If you are joining me from YouTube, what you'll want to do is look to the right of my video and find the live chat box and type your question in there. Or if you're on a mobile device, look below. Finally, if you are joining me on Twitch, then just use the chat like you would on any other stream. And I will see your questions, be able to address them, and we'll make sure that that gets tackled. The point of a technology class is for you to learn something useful about technology. So if you're learning things that are useful to you about technology, then things are going great, even if I'm not necessarily hitting every point on my outline. Whereas if I'm saying things and they're not making any sense to you, then that's not a great use of our time and not a very successful technology class. So please ask those questions. Also, in a similar vein, if there are technical difficulties, this is the internet. And even though I teach technology classes, technology is like any other tool. Sometimes it breaks. So if there are problems, let me know so that way we can address them as quickly as possible and just use all those methods I just described, any of them, to let me know what's going on. So let's go ahead and dive in. To get started, we're going to head back to the Trinket web service, just like we did during previous classes here. So let me go ahead and fire up the screen sharing here. All right, great. Okay, so in case you can't see it or it's a little too small, where you're going to want to go to follow along is https://trinket.io/python3. You probably only need to type that bit in. but I'll go ahead and send that out. And that way everybody can get to it. Okay, great. So, so if you follow that link, you should arrive at something like this. If you have text in your box over here on the left, like I do, then you can go ahead and get rid of it because we're gonna shift gears a little bit. So just go ahead and drag over that with your mouse and press delete or backspace or whatever, or you can click in the middle and hold Control and press A or Command A on a Mac, and that'll select all, and you can delete it that way. So, so we just want this area where it says main.py above it clear. And if there are any other little tabs up here, just go ahead and click the little gear and close those out because you won't need them. All right, great. So here's what we're going to do today. What we're going to do today is talk about object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is kind of a group of tools that are available in a lot of different programming languages that make it easier to organize the information inside your program in a more logical way, which is really nice because sometimes when we're writing code, it can get a little out there, a little esoteric. So organizing your stuff as objects, as stuff, can really go a long way towards making your program work better, making it more understandable to to you, making it easier for you to make changes and adjustments and fixes to it, and just making it easier for your user to interact with the program as well. So it's pretty cool. We're gonna dive into that and learn all about it. So before we start writing our code, I do want to touch on one quick piece of terminology that you might need a refresher on, and that certainly will be helpful. So one of the things that we dealt with a lot during the last session, which is Hello World Functions and Flow Control, is, as the name might suggest, functions. Functions are little pieces of code that can be reused throughout your program. Rather than copying and pasting that code over and over again into various portions of the program, a function is a little, it's a bit of what we call modular code. Basically what that means is you can sort of feed information into it, and then something will come out, something that that's useful to either the user or to the rest of the program. So that input, the thing that you put in, is called an argument. The thing that you get out is the return, and when you tell your program to use a particular function, you are calling that function. Just want to refresh your memory on those pieces, those little terms, so that way when I bring that up, you're like, oh, right, it's that. Okay, cool. So let's dive into this. So we talked about last week functions in Python. You normally create them by using this def keyword here. You type that in, you type the name of the function, you tell it what kind of information the function is going to need to work, and then you write the code that's actually inside the function. So we are going to continue to use functions a fair bit during this session, but what we're going to do instead of is we're going to create a program that'll allow us to do some really pretty interesting, useful stuff, and that'll demonstrate a lot of those key things about our our function, or about object-oriented programming. So let's talk about the, well, first, let's write a little bit of code that can serve as an example. So let's say that I'm working on a program for a school that's going to keep track of students and faculty, like essentially keep track of their information. So that way, if we need to look up a particular student or a particular faculty member, we can go and to our program and just get that information really quick. If that's the case, I'm going to start with the students. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a, well, actually, I'm going to start with just people, because both the students and the faculty are going to have specific information that we'll need about all of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to type in the keyword class. Class is a pretty important term in object-oriented programming. And what a class is it is sort of a category of object inside of our program. Now, an object inside the program could be a lot of different things, and we'll talk about how to create those moving forward. But a class is a specific group of objects. So obviously, well, thinking about a school class is actually a pretty good way to ponder it. If you think about a class in school, there's, your class and your friend's class, and then there's your older brother's class, or whatever the case may be. And so a class in this situation is a similar thing. Each class consists of different objects, what we call instances, that are the members of the group. Specifically, a class is kind of a blueprint for a specific type of object, whatever that object happens to be. In this case, the type of object that we're going to create first is a person. So I'm going to type class, and then I'm going to type person and put a colon after that. Traditionally, in object-oriented programming, the names of our classes are capitalized. So, we haven't been using a ton of capitalization in our code, generally speaking, but this is one instance where having it capitalized is kind of the accepted norm, but it's not strictly required. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some information about our person class here. So what I'm going to do, I'll press enter, and that creates line 2 for me. And then I'm going to press enter again, and that's going to bring me down a little further so that I just have a little bit of blank space here, and that'll just make it easier to read this. So let's go ahead and create a and figure out what pieces of information we're going to want to keep up with about all of these people. So one key piece of information we're going to need is their name, right? So that's going to be the first, the first bit of information that we definitely want to capture. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create, so each class has a certain number of functions associated with it. So we talked about functions before. Functions are just pieces of reusable code that work as sort of a routine or a procedure, that sort of thing. So there are going to be specific functions that are associated with our object-oriented programming classes. And those specific those specific functions, because they're associated with an object or an object-oriented programming class, are known as methods. We actually used a method previously a couple of times. One of the instances where we used a method in the very first Hello World class was when we made when we changed the information that the person typed in. They said, we asked them, are you hungry? They would say yes, no, or something else. And we changed it so that that would be all lowercase. So even if they typed yes with a capital Y or yes in all caps or whatever, it would still count as the same as if they just typed yes in all lowercase. So that lower method was actually a method that we call on when working with code previously. But we're going to get into the nitty gritty of how to create those methods for yourself, and what all we can do with them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the first most important method for any class, and that's the init method. That's short for initialization. And what that does is tell Python the information that we need in order to create a person in our database, basically, in this situation, in order to add a member to the class. If we add a member to the class, that particular one member that we've added is called an instance. So each person that we add in our program is going to be one of those instances. All right, so we need to know what information do we need to find out about our instance, about the people that whose information we're inputting here. So we settle on the name, first of all. Let's go ahead and create our init method. So just like with other functions that we've dealt with previously, I'm going to type the def keyword first, DEF. I'm going to put a space. And then for this method specifically, we need to write it in a specific way. So we're going to do 2 underscores, underscore, underscore, and then INIT underscore, underscore. By the way, that double underscore thing in a development that's slightly annoying to me, but is kind of funny too, is known as dunders. Those double underscores, very silly. But that's, if you see somebody writing that, or you hear someone say that, that's what they're talking about, double underscores. So that's what we've got there. So this is the init method for our person class. Now I'm going to open a set of parentheses here. So I'll hold shift, press 9 to get a left parenthesis. And then I'm going to tell it what information it needs. So the first thing we want to point to here is, or the first thing we want to type inside these parentheses is actually just the word self, comma. So when we use the word self inside the rest of this method, the rest of this function, we're referring to this specific instance, this specific object inside of our program, whatever person, we're inputting information for. We always have to put self here when we're using this init method, and really in all of our methods that are going to be stored with our object-oriented programming classes here. So self is the first thing. I'll put a comma, add a space just for readability, and I'll type first, comma, last. And then outside of my parentheses, so we've Python has added a second or a right parenthesis for us when we added the left one. But outside of the parentheses, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to hit colon to add that to the end of the line there. I'll press enter. And now we can write the code that's actually going to be inside of our init method. So the first thing we need to do is we need to assign or we need to set up all the different little properties of our person. Those properties are known as attributes. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to type self dot first equals sign and then first, just like that. All right. And then let's go self dot last equal sign and then last. Okay, cool. So we've actually created our new we've created our person here already. So or our person's information. We've defined what makes a person inside of our program. That sounds dangerous. So now let's go ahead and just add a little, let's just hard code an instance of this person class into our program. So I'm just going to put me in there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say person1 equal sign. And then I'll say person, open a set of parentheses. And inside the parentheses, I need to put a first name and a last name there separated by a comma, just like this is. I need to ignore this self because when I say self inside of the method, that means something, but we can ignore it when we're outside of the method. So I'm just going to type Nathan. Whoops. Almost forgot. Okay, I got to put it in quotation marks. So single quotes is what I'm going to use, aka apostrophes. I'll put Nathan inside single quotes there. Add a comma outside of the quotation marks. Make sure you do that. And then Smith there. Okay. So we've written it essentially just like this. What we're doing here is we're creating a variable. So we talked about variables in the first session. A variable is kind of a container or a placeholder for a specific piece of information, usually called a value. So something like if we say, if we say 2x equals 4, then x is 2, right? And that x is a variable. And similarly here, we're creating a variable called person1. So we're going person1 equals sign, which assigns a value to the variable. And then what we're storing inside this variable is an OOP object, a person. And we're creating that person by giving our program the appropriate information. So person, and then the first name, and then the last name, just like that. Okay, so now we just need, we need to set up our program so that it will check our work, essentially. Okay, when this code runs here on line 7, what's going to happen is Python will create this variable called person1, and then it will create an instance of the person class that has the first variable Nathan and the last variable Smith, right? And then once we've done that, we can point to that and say, okay, I need to know that person's, well, we only have a first name and a last name at this point. So we can say, I need to know that person's first name, or I need to know that person's last name, or whatever. So we can then use that. We can then refer back to specific properties, specific attributes of that instance of the class of that particular person in this case. So here's how I would do that. I'm going to go to, let's see. I'm going to go print open a set of parentheses, just using that print function to get some text and display it on the screen. And then I'll say person1 dot first. I'll put a space there. And then I'm actually going to add a space. I'm going to actually tell it to specifically print a space between the first name and the last name. Otherwise, we're going to get them right together. So I'm going to go plus sign. And then inside of quotation marks, I'm going to add a space right there. So quotation marks, single quotes, space in the middle, plus sign again. And then I'll say person1 dot last. There we go. Okay. So what this is doing, so I've said print, which tells Python, hey, display some text on the screen. And then, excuse me, I have person1 dot first. So the OOP object that I've created here, a person object named Nathan Smith, we're referring to that object by using the variable that goes with it. And then by adding dot and then first, we're saying, I need a specific piece of information, a specific attribute about that person. And so this is telling it, okay, grab that first name attribute. Then next to that, so we're using the plus sign to concatenate. Again, that's your $5 computer science word for today. Concatenate means take some text and put it next to some other text. And so we concatenate a little space there just to, well, put a space between the first name and the last name, as you would normally see. And then one more plus sign to concatenate once again. And next to that space, we're going to put, we've got person1 dot last, which says, look at that person object and grab the last attribute there, the last name. All right, so I'm going to hit the little play button up here to get it rolling. And sure enough, it printed my name right over there. And of course, if I change something about this, should do the same thing. So all of that was a very roundabout way to just print a name that we could type in. But I wanted to show you what we're doing in creating this. Let's go ahead and add another step here. Let's say that at this particular school, we assign an email address to someone based on just their first and last name. If that's the case, what I'm going to do is then I can use my program to create their email address automatically. So what I'm going to do is come up here, back up here to the Init method, where we're creating an instance of our person class. I'm going to press enter here. And remember, Python cares a lot about indentation. So you'll notice this is double indented. So it's indented underneath the person class. And so right here, and then it's indented again underneath the def keyword so that it's inside the person class and it's inside the init method here. Okay, so the third thing that I'm going to do here to assign this person their email address is I'm going to say self.email equal sign, and then we'll go first plus sign to concatenate again, single quotes, and inside of that a period. So apostrophe, period, apostrophe, plus last, plus, again, inside of single quotes, at cool.edu. All right, great. So this is going to Hey, Vicky and Little Rock saying hi on Facebook. Have a good one. Thanks for joining me. Glad you're here. So we've got our first name property up here, which we defined. Our well, actually, what we're doing is actually taking this first and we're dropping it here. Whatever they put in here, we're putting it here as equal sign or as first, and then we're adding the dot after that, last, and then after that we're adding @cool.edu. If we wanted to be a little more finicky about it, then we could go first dot lower and open a set of parentheses, last dot lower and open a set of parentheses there. That calls that lower method that's associated with any variable in Python, and it's going to make it all lowercase instead of being capitalized. So we can do that if we want to. You don't have to do that though. All right, so we told it to print person1 dot first, person1 dot last. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to print their email address as well. To separate that out a little bit, what I'm going to do is add I'm going to create another line here. Now I could use another print command, but I don't really need to do that. I'm just going to create a blank line, and that way it'll print a 2-line message rather than just one. To do that, I'm going to do \n. Whoops, sorry. Okay. So I'm going to have to put in single quotes, \n. There we go. And then I'll put, actually, I don't need a space there either. And then I'm going to put person1 dot email. I know that's a little hard to read. It's apostrophe \n person one, and then person1 dot email, and then apostrophe again to close those single quotes. If I wanted to, I could even go like put a little space here because Python will ignore it. But that's not great for readability, so I prefer not to do that. Okay, there we go. So now, oops, something went wrong. Okay, we might have to do this a little differently. Okay, I changed the N to an R. Let me try that again. Nope, it does not like that. Let's see. Okay. How strange. Don't know what I did wrong there. Even if you get really good at writing code, sometimes you're going to run into problems, and that's okay. It's just, it's part of life. Let's see. Oh, of course. Okay, I forgot to add my plus sign after that. That seems very, all right, there we go. So now we're concatenating and we're good to go. All right, let's try again. There we go. Nope, that's a problem. Oh, I see. Y'all, it is after lunch. So all the blood's rushing to my stomach. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the single quote over here. I'm going to put the in \n inside of single quotes. And I'm going to add a plus sign here between that and person1 dot email. Okay, that should do the trick. The reason it, by the way, the reason it printed person1 dot email here is that that's exactly what I wrote inside of the single quotes. When you do that, Python considers it to be part of the string of text. And so it's just like, oh, okay, these are the words exactly that you want me to put on the screen. So here we go. There we go. Nate Smith, nate.smith at cool.edu. Nice. Excellent. Okay, that worked. So again, down here in the print statement, we're accessing first the first name property here. So that was fed into our init function by this person, and then in parentheses, Nate, comma, Smith. So we're accessing that first name attribute. Then we have a plus sign, and we're adding a space there so that we don't have the names right next to each other. Plus sign again, and we add on the last name. Plus sign again, and we've got this slash or backslash n. This is the new line command. So what we're telling Python is just move on down to the next line of text rather than staying on the line of text you currently are. So you have this new line backslash n inside of single quotes there, or regular quotation marks. And then finally, we have one more plus, and we have person1.email. So we're accessing, the email attribute that we created here. And rather than creating the email attribute directly from information that is being fed to us by the program, instead we're accessing or we're adding that information. We're generating that, and our program is generating that information based on the information it already has. Okay, so let's keep going here, and let's add a way for our folks to put in, our users to put in their own person for the program. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead, and I'm going to come up here above where it says person1 equals person and bring all that down just to get it out of the way for the moment. We'll leave a little bit of white space here, but make sure you're not indented at this point. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to ask our user who they want to enter into the program. So we'll say print, and then open a set of parentheses, open a set of single quotes. Who would you like to add? Question mark. Excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and do one of those new line things again. So I'm going to go backslash in. By the way, this is the backslash, not the forward slash. The backslash is the one above the enter or return key. The forward slash is the one that shares a key with the question mark, and that's the one that you always use in web addresses. Never use a backslash in a web address, even if they tell you to. They're wrong. Okay, cool. So we've got that. And this time I am going to go ahead and just press enter and make another line here, because Python is still going to consider all of this to be inside of the single quotes. So I'll go oops, that's right. Okay. I do have to close the single quotes, but then I can reopen them. So I've got my apostrophe there, another one here. And inside that, I'm going to do single quotes, first name, colon. And then, all right, so that's our print command. And then down below, we're going to say, let's just go fname equals sign input. and we open and close a set of parentheses on that. Okay, so this is going to ask, who would you like to add? And then give them, and then it'll say first name. And then they type in. So this input function, again, just to remind you, allows the user to type in information and press enter or return and have that information and submit that information to the program. And then when they do that on this particular line, it's going to store it with the variable f name so that that's where their first name is. I'll press enter a couple of times and we'll do another print command. And this time, just to make things easier, I'm actually just going to go ahead and, well, actually, I guess I don't need to do that. So I'll open my parentheses with the print command, open my set of single quotes, and I'll say last name, colon, inside of the single quotes. And we'll go down to the next line. We'll say L name equal sign input, open parentheses, close parentheses. Nice. All right. And now we need one more line of code to make this work properly. So what we can do is, well, to make it at least store properly, what I'm going to do is go person2 equals sign, and then person, open parentheses, open single quotes. Whoops, nope, don't need the single quotes this time. It's person, and then F name, comma, L name, close parentheses. And then let's go ahead and have their information printed out here. So I'm going to go, rather than person one, I'm going to go person two, person two, person two down here, just to make it easy on us. Okay, so I still have this line that assigns my name as person one, but that's fine. It'll just be, Python will basically ignore it, or we won't see any difference in how we're able to use the program. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and hit this little play button. We'll see what happens. Who would you like to add? First name. John, okay, type that in. Last name, Jacob. Okay, I'll press enter. There it is, john.jacob at cool.edu. Great, okay, excellent. So let's go ahead and let's see. Let's go ahead and add some additional information here. Now, one thing that we can do is we can add more information to the definition of our person class here. So we could add, for example, we could add more attributes that can be manually entered, but we might also just add attributes that will be hard-coded to every instance of our person class. For example, we can add a location. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a variable, location equals sign. And then we'll go inside of single quotes, 1, 2, 3, Main Street. And then I'm going to put backslash in. So again, we're creating a new line inside of our code. Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201. Okay, great. So now we have this address, 2-line address, 123 Main Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201. Of course, the idea with this is the students and the faculty, the they all are associated with the school, and the school is at this particular location. So this location is associated with every instance of that person class. If I want, I can come down here, and just to make it a little easier on myself, I'm just going to add another line, print, open my parentheses, and then don't need the single quotes this time. I'll go person 2 dot location. And there we go. Now, if I run the code again, first name Darth, last name Vader, Darth Vader, Darth.Vader at cool.edu, 123 Main Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201. So, and also similarly, if I were to change this all to person 1, then it would give you my name, my email address, and then the same physical address down there at the bottom. So that so you can use this to add in, so you can define your classes. You can define your class by allowing your class instances, I should say, by allowing the user to put in information or to import information in some way. But you can also give your class instances specific attributes just by writing them in code and essentially creating a variable inside of the class, just like this. So, so this can be really useful because there may be different classes that you can interact with in different ways and things like that. And so if an object is a particular class, then you can do X, Y, and Z with it, but maybe you can't do A, B, and C with it or whatever. And in other classes, you can do A, B, and C, you can't do X, Y, and Z. Or maybe there's a class where you can do C and then X and Y, but not the other ones. So, so that really, that makes it easy to sort of, that makes it easy to access whatever information you need about a particular instance of a class. Let's go ahead and create another class function or method here. So again, any instance of a class is going to have these specific pieces of functionality, these specific methods known as functions. And so for our person class, one thing that I want to do, because down here I'm having to like manually tell it, okay, first you print this and then you print this and then change these numbers if I want to access a different person, a different instance of a person in our system. In order to save myself some work and make it easier to sort of expand and add more classes and things like that, then we can then I want to actually make a method that will allow me to print the information about a class automatically, or about an instance automatically. So let's come down here. I'm going to press enter after this at cool.edu, press enter one more time, and then I'm going to go backspace a little bit so that this is indented once, but not twice. You don't want to unindent it. I don't want to unindent it all the way because this is still going to be, this method is still going to be a part of the person class. And if I unindent it all the way, then it's going to be a separate function that's outside of the class. Excuse me. So I'm going to use that def keyword again. And this time, no dunders, no double underlines there, or underscores, I should say. I'm going to type print info as the name of my method here. And then I'm going to open a set of parentheses and just put in self. So This particular method doesn't need any special out or input from anything else. It just needs to know essentially which instance are you talking about. And so I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. Just know it doesn't need any outside input, basically. Okay, so I'm going to put a colon here, and then I'm going to hit enter, come down. This is a double indented line. And first, I'm going to say print, open a set of parentheses, open a set of single quotes, and put \n inside of those single quotes. Great. So that's just going to give me a little bit of space between whatever else is going on above this and the person's information as it's displayed on the screen. I'm going to hit enter again, and I'm going to do print, open a set of parentheses, and go self dot first. So that's going to print their first name on that first line there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab this and copy it. So I'll select it with my mouse by dragging. I can either right click and click copy, or I can press Control C on my Windows keyboard, Control V if you're on a Mac, or excuse me, Command C is in cat if you're on a Mac. I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to paste it in. Again, you can either right click and click paste, or you can press Control V on a PC or Command V as in Victor on a Mac. Instead of first, I'm going to put last there. Another line, I'm going to paste it again. Self dot location. Another print statement there, self dot email. All right, there we go. So anytime I enter someone into my program, into the database here, then whenever I invoke this print info method, it's just going to print out the information about that person. So instead of all this stuff, I can say person, whoops. I can say person 2 dot print info, and then a set of parentheses. And we'll say person 1 dot print info, and open a set of parentheses. So again, this is calling this print info method, this function that's built into each instance of that person class. So whenever I put whenever I refer in my code to a person or an object that's stored as a person inside our program, then I can put the name of the variable that's stored with and say dot print info, and it's going to do all this stuff. It's going to give me a blank line, then it's going to print their first name, their last name, their location, and their email address. So let's give it a shot. First name, Bob. Last name, blah, blah. There we go. Bob, blah, blah. 123 Main Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201. bob.loblaw@cool.edu. There we go. It worked. Great. Perfect. So, that's working pretty well. We can store the information for our instance, our person whose information we're recording, and then in an instance of the person class, and then we can retrieve it here by using this print info function. So let's go ahead and add something else here. So I said that this was a system for tracking students and faculty at a school. So there's some student-specific information that won't be relevant for anybody on staff that we want to keep inside this system. In order to make that happen, we're going to need to create another class, what we call a child class, inside of the parent person class in order to make this work. Now, I'm not calling it a child class because it's a student. I'm calling it a child class because the parent class is just person. So a student, a faculty member, a staff member, whoever else has their information stored in this system, all of those are different types of people. But students are a specific type of people that's distinct from faculty, a different type of people. So we need to have kind of a subcategory, a separate class for students specifically. But all of those students will still be considered people. And so person needs to be the parent class associated with it. So let's make that happen. What I'm going to do, I'm going to press enter here a couple of times. I'm going to hit backspace a couple of times because we don't actually, you would think that you would want this student class to be indented underneath the person, the definition of the person class, but we don't. We actually want it to be separate. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know why that is, but that is indeed the way that it is. So we want it to be totally unindented. We want this to be right up against that left margin. We're going to type class again, and this time we're going to call it student. And this time after the name of the class, up here we just had person colon, but after the name of the class, in this case, what we're going to do is put person inside of parentheses here, and then put a colon after that. Putting person inside of parentheses defines person as the parent class of the student class. Okay, I'm going to press enter a couple of times. Again, it's nice to have this white space. And every time that you create a class, we need to have that init method, just like we did up here in the person class. The init method is the method that you use to create an instance of the class, to, in this case, add a person to our database. So whenever you do that, you have to create a so whenever you are creating an instance of a particular class, you have to use that init method, or there can also be alternate ones, which we'll talk about in a bit. So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to create a we're going to create that init method. That's also known as a constructor. So we're going to create the constructor by typing def, double underscores there, init, double underscores again, and then, parentheses, parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we're going to go self. Again, you got to have that at the beginning of each method, each function inside of our class, comma, first, comma, last, comma, and then GPA is what we want here. The GPA, for at least for this example, is going to be the one additional defining attribute that we have for our students versus any other random person. So I'm going to press enter here, and whoops. Nope, I need a colon after that. Now I'll press enter. There we go. That's pretty good. So we've got this double indented underneath this def line. And then we'll say self dot GPA equals GPA. Now, by the way, the reason that I'm doing this might feel kind of redundant it's actually kind of important. What I'm doing here when I say self.gpa equals, I'm creating this attribute called GPA inside of each instance of the class. Now, the attribute may or may not be filled in. It depends on the instance, and it depends on how you've set things up in the rest of your program. But what we're going to do, so down here, when I created a person, I had the first name here and the last name here, or I had just Nathan in single quotes here, comma, Smith in single quotes here. If I were creating a student, I would have to have another comma here, and I would have to add some value for the GPA. And then that goes in here and gets assigned to this GPA attribute there. I could call this something different, like grade point, like so. And then down here, I would have to change this one to grade point. But this could stay GPA. And if I wanted to access this person's GPA information in the rest of the program, I would reference it as, person1.GPA rather than grade point. So again, up here, I could be calling these something different. So I could call this one first name and this one last name. But then I have to also change this one to first name, this one to last name, this one to first name, and this one to last name. But again, having changed that, it doesn't change what's going on when we reference those pieces of information. It's person one dot first, person one dot last, and so on. So essentially, for the whatever information is after this comma here, when you're creating a student inside of the program, whatever information is after this comma, that gets represented here in the constructor as grade point. But if you want to get that information out of there later on, after the student instance has been created, then you refer to it as variable.gpa. So that's it's worth making that distinction just because it does matter in some cases. But this is honestly no, okay. I'm not going to change all that back. Okay, this is cool. All right, so so far we're looking good, but we need to do one additional thing here. What we need to do is when we create a student, it's also a person. And so we may have already given it a first name and a last name, or we may have, or more likely when we're creating this, well, we'll also need to put in the first name and the last name. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to go enter, and I'm going to write super, open a set of parentheses. After the set of parentheses, I go dot underscore underscore INIT underscore underscore, and then in parentheses, first, comma, last. Okay, so here's what we're doing on this line. It looks a little weird, but it's actually not too bad. What we've got here is when we say super parentheses dot, and then this, what we're telling Python is, hey, look up at the parent class of this class, that we're working in, and find this method, in this case, the init method, the constructor. And then whatever we've given it as information for the student, in terms of the first name and the last name, feed that in right here. So So it's going to create a student, but it's so we're going to create a student here, but by virtue of that, we're also creating a person. And so when we do that, and so we're referring to this and saying, okay, do all of the just person stuff that's up here with the information I already gave you. So I already gave you a first name, a last name, and a GPA. The GPA we assign to this student class right here. But the first name and the last name we're going to pass on to the constructor for the person class. And you just follow the instructions for that, and then everything will be good. So the last thing we need to do with this is we need to get a we need to make the GPA printable in this print info. So what I'm going to do is come up here, click next to print self.email, and press enter to create a new line. And in this line, we're going to use an if statement. So just a refresher from the last couple of weeks, when you use this if statement, you type the word if, then you're going to get, then you're giving Python some condition to check on. So you're saying, okay, take a look at this, see if this is the case or not. If it is, then what we're going to do is we're going to, if something is the case, then you're going to follow these directions. If it's not the case, then I might give you some alternate directions, or you might just need to skip over this bit entirely. And that latter is going to be the case in this situation. So I'm going to type if is instance, and then I'm going to open a set of quotation mark or of parentheses here, self, comma, student, and then outside of the parentheses, a colon right here. So what this is going to do, this is instance function is going to check to see, I'm giving it two, what we call arguments, two pieces of information to look at. The first one is self. So that's going to be the instance that we have, or that we're working with right now, this particular person inside of our database. So we're going to look at this instance, and that's why it says self there. And we're going to compare it to this student and see whether it is that. So we'll see whether this self, whoever's info we're printing, we're going to see if that person is part of the student class. If they are, then we're going to follow the directions that are indented here. If they're not, then we're going to skip over. So I'm going to press enter, and the directions inside are going to be print, open parentheses, self dot GPA. Pretty easy. So, so now we have our thing created here. Let's go ahead and add another, let's add some additional functionality for the user. We've created this, we've added this additional class. We've done all this work to get the information to print properly, but we still haven't given our user a way to tell us whether the person is a student or not. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is, so let's go print. I'll open a set of parentheses, open a set of single quotes, and say, is this person a student? Question mark. And then actually we need to give them some clues about what they should do, because we don't want to make this too complicated. I'll say y/n in parentheses there. So they're going to type y or n. Now, this is a little fiddly. So we probably, if we were writing a real program for like real users, we probably wouldn't do it exactly this way. We'd probably give them a better way to tell us, but for now, this will work. If they type Y, then it'll be correct, or then that person's a student. If they type in, then they're not. So print, is this person a student, Y or N? And then we'll create a variable called ANS for answer, or just ans. ANS equals input. Open a set of parentheses, close them right back. And then we'll say if ANS double equal sign, and then Y inside of single quotes. So, all right. So if that person's a student, if they say Y colon, and then indented underneath that, new equals, whoops, well, then we need to ask them for the GPA. So if their answer is yes, we're going to print what backslash apostrophe S, what's their GPA, question mark, and put our single quotes there. Make sure that if you use a contraction like I did here, make sure you put a backslash in front of the apostrophe and you put another apostrophe at the end to close those single quotes. So if their answer is yes, we print what's their GPA, and GPA equals input. Set of parentheses, and we're good. All right. So, right. Nope, we need to do one more thing. So we now have 4 variables that we've asked them to input: the first name, the last name, the answer to whether this person's a student, and now the GPA. So if they're a student, of course, we need to add them to our sort of database. So I'm going to go new equals student, open a set of parentheses, and then I'm going to say F name, comma, L name, comma, GPA. There we go. And again, that's using this constructor up here to create a new student. So we have first name, the last name, and the GPA. We skip over this self because that's just referring to the instance of this particular class. So we have new equals student. So we're creating a new student instance and storing it in this variable new. All right, so there we go. All right, so now we've got our stuff that we've done with the student. Now what we need to do is, what if this person's not a student? So I'm going to backspace and I'll say else colon, and then we'll say, actually, we don't even need that. Oh, yes, we do. Okay, so I'm gonna create the variable new again here, but this time it's just going to be a person and F name, L name, just like that. So either way, we're going to come out with a variable new that has the person's information in it. So I'll hit enter and unindent and hit enter one more time. And then we're going to go print, open a set of parentheses, and I'm just going to say new dot, what is it? Print info. Actually, I don't even need that print statement. I'll just say new dot print info and a set of parentheses with nothing in between. And then let's get rid of this just so that it doesn't mess us up. We're going to keep it for our reference, but we don't necessarily need it to, we don't need this code to run right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the comment system and comment out this text like I talked about last week. In Python, to mark a particular line as a comment, in other words, this is for humans, not for you computer, you just need to add a like a hash mark, pound sign, whatever you want to call it, an octothorpe. So I'll put it in front of that line of code, this line of code, and these two. Da-da-da. Okay, great. So you'll notice they turned green. Python has marked these as comments. So now we can refer to them if we need to, but these lines of code are not going to run by themselves. That's a really cool way to, if you for instance, disable a line of code temporarily and then be able to bring it back later, or keep it for your reference because it's how it used to work. And what if you run into a bug or whatever? So that can be really handy. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and run the program and see what we've got. Make sure it's working. So I'm going to hit the little play button up here again. Who would you like to add? First name, you, last name, there. Is this person a student, Y or N? So if they, let's assume they are a student this time, I'll type Y. What's their GPA? 3.5. Enter. You there, 123 Main Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201, u.there at cool.edu, 3.5. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so let's try the other way. Who would you like to add? First name, Ed, last name, Lee. Is this person a student? We'll say in, but really it could be anything that I type there since it's just an else. Ed Lee, 123 Main Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72201, ed.lee at cool.edu. Great. Okay, awesome. So that's working. So let's go ahead and throw it in there, and add in one more little bit of functionality that's that we might find useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to add what's called a class method. So a class, so there are actually 3 different kinds of methods that we can create inside of our classes here. An instance method can deal with data from an individual instance of a class. So an instant method is kind of the default kind of method. So it grabs information. So, it grabs information from that individual instance, that person or that student in this case, and can make some changes with it. Another way that you can do is, or another thing that you can do is create this class method. So a class method is going to be is going to deal with information about a class in general, or just run for a class in general. Not necessarily, it won't necessarily have access to information inside of a specific instance. So it's just basically it's just going to be handy it's just going to be things that you might do that are associated with a particular class in general, or ways that a class might interact with other parts of your program. So let's add one of these. Let's see. So here we go. That doesn't seem right in my notes. Okay, something's up there. I see. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is again, it's not going to have access to the information inside of the student class, but but it can make changes and add some other stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to where did I use that? Okay. I'm getting turned around here in my notes. I'm so sorry, y'all. It's been a little while since I've done this class. Man. Okay, let's just go ahead and give this a shot. So, all right. Okay. Strange. Okay, I'm not sure. Something's weird in my notes here, y'all. Give me just a moment. Let me check this out and see what is going on. Okay, I see. All right. Okay, I was not very clear in my notes, so I apologize for that moment of confusion there. So a class method can deal with the information inside of a class, but it doesn't or of an instance, but it doesn't necessarily need to. So that could be useful for things like a little GPA calculator, or any number of things. Well, let's go ahead and make one now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come down here under the student class, press enter here, hit my backspace, and I'm going to go, in order to create a class method, I'm going to go at class method here first. Then I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to say def again. And this one we'll call update GPA. And self, I'll put a colon after that. All right, so inside of our update GPA method, we're going to say print, open a set of parentheses and say, what is this student's, again, don't forget your backslash there. And don't forget to write T. New GPA, question mark, and close my single quotes there. All right, then we're going to say new GPA equals input, open a set of parentheses. So we're going to store the new GPA with the variable new GPA. Hey, what do you know? And then we'll say self dot GPA equals new GPA. And finally, we'll go ahead and just confirm it. Print inside of parentheses and single quotes, the GPA has been updated to plus self dot GPA. Oh, make sure you put a space between this colon and the apostrophe here, the single quote, because otherwise you're going to run into otherwise the GPA and the colon are going to be right next to each other. And then finally, plus, and then inside a single quotes, a period, just to make it end the sentence properly. So now, if we wanted to, let's go ahead and do new dot update GPA. Down here at the bottom, of course, we need our parentheses after that. All right, so here we go. All right, I'm going to hit the play again. Who would you like to add? Wow. Is this person a student? Yes. What's their GPA? 3.7. All right. What is this student's new GPA? Let's go 3.5 again. The GPA has been updated to 3.5. So it's another way you can do this. But again, these methods can, with the @ class method above them, can be created so that they don't need any particular information from the instance or the class themselves. There's also a third type, which we're not going to really get into because it's not quite as practical as some of this other stuff, which is called a static method. It can't access information about the instance or the class inside of it. It's just a standalone method or a standalone function that just happens to be inside of a particular class. So that doesn't seem nearly as practical to me, but it is a thing that exists. And that's pretty much it. What questions do you all have for me before we wrap it up for today? One thing I'll show you really quick, actually, while while you're typing, if you're typing a question, is that we have a really useful tool for learning more about a lot of this stuff because, of course, this is a beginner class. It's definitely not exhaustive, and it's certainly a useful skill that I've found myself expanding over time, and I think. I think you can probably get a lot more out of it than just what we covered here today. So let me show you this. The way that this works is here on cals.org, you move your mouse over Learn, and you can head on down to Udemy right here, UDMY. Don't go directly to the Udemy website because you'll need to log in through the library. Using your library card information. If you don't log in through the library, then what's going to happen is you're not going to have free access to the content that's here because this is a paid service, but you get access to it for free with your CALS card. So I'm going to click on that, click on Go to Udemy, and then it's going to take me through. I can sign in using either a Google account or a Microsoft account. And basically, this is an online, primarily video-based learning service that that's really cool. It has a bunch of content that's related to kind of business skills, technology skills, and creative skills. And so you can find all sorts of stuff. For example, well, if you wanted to find out more about Python, just type Python at the top there. And there are 3,121 different courses that at least touch on Python or mention it to some degree. And you can also filter it down. There are different levels in terms of the expertise. There are specific topics that you can narrow it to. You might want to limit it down to only languages that you speak. That could potentially be helpful, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So definitely encourage you to check that out if you have an active library card. And if you don't, and you live in Pulaski or Perry County, other than unfortunately in North Little Rock at this point, then you have free. You can get a library card for free if you don't have one. So get on that and get in here and learn some more. If you have additional questions, I haven't seen any come in. So if you have additional questions, feel free to let me know. Just shoot me an email if you want. The email address you can use for that is digital@cals.org. And I hope that y'all have a fantastic rest of your day and week since it's Monday. Thanks so much for joining me again. Bye.